These next few weeks of the Sophisticated Declutter are big. We are going to be decluttering our closet. I'm going to talk about weeks 14 through 18 of the declutter and what you can expect. So like I said, this is a major area to declutter. I know it can cause a lot of stress and anxiety because it's one of those places that you just hype up so much. When you think about decluttering, maybe the first space you think about is decluttering your clothing. And that's the exact reason that I've dedicated 5 weeks to our clothing and closets. I'm going to go through how we're breaking it down. I do have another video I would love for you to watch with a bunch of tips and tricks. It's kind of like Closet Decluttering 101. I actually filmed it sitting on my closet floor, so it'll look very similar to this video, but I will link that and I would love for you to watch that video and get started that way. After you finish this one and understand how the flow is going to move through and why I broke down the closet in the way that I did. So for week 14, we're going to start with casual clothing. Looking ahead, week 15 is going to be dress clothing. And the reason I broke it down into casual clothing and dress clothing is because I think that there's a different mentality that goes on when you're looking at your casual clothing and your dress clothing. I also find it beneficial to have 2 weeks dedicated to decluttering clothing. Because we have 2 weeks starting on week 14 with our casual clothing, I have my closet kind of divided by dresses, jackets, I have tops, long sleeve and short sleeve. I also have some pants and skirts hanging. But what I'm going to do is sort through and pick out those casual clothing items, the ones I'm wearing on a more daily basis. A lot of times I'm probably going to be ignoring some of my skirts and my dress pants or dresses themselves. Dresses are typically falling under the more formal clothing category. And when you're thinking about casual clothing, it should be clothing that you're comfortable wearing on a somewhat daily basis. Maybe if you're just going out to a more casual dinner, those types of things. And again, the video that I'm linking is going to give you all of the questions you can ask, but I do have a few basic questions that you can ask yourself as you are decluttering clothing, things that you can work through that help you get started. I always recommend, especially in the closet, starting off by pulling everything out, putting clothing back in that you know you want to keep, your all-time favorite items, and working that direction. It's called reverse decluttering. And then you'll really only have to run that list with your maybe items. Hopefully you have some items that you can quickly identify that you want to get rid of right away. And then as we're talking about this, I also want to mention, with the question of when was the last time I wore it, that's going to be really important with your casual clothing, because if it's casual and it should be something that you're wearing on, again, a somewhat regular basis, it should be relatively recently that you've worn that item of clothing. And I'm going to let you decide what relatively reasonably means. It's completely up to you. But as we roll into week 15, we're going to switch to dress clothing. And that question is going to become much less important because let's say you are looking at a dress that you would wear to a wedding. And you're asking yourself, when's the last time I wore this dress? But you haven't gone to a wedding in the past year. So maybe it's been more than a year since you've worn that dress, but you have a wedding coming up and you would love to wear it. You don't want to declutter just based on the when is the last time I wore it idea, especially when you're looking at dress clothing. You want to have the mindset of when was the last time I had the opportunity to wear it? Did I wear it when I had the opportunity? If not, why not? Think through it that way, and that will help you with your dress clothing a little bit more. I'll also say the reason I did casual clothing first and then dress clothing is because oftentimes we have more in the casual clothing category. So if you are feeling like you didn't finish up casual clothing and it bleeds into week 15 with your dress clothing, that's okay. You can kind of just make sure you finish those 2 by the end of the week and you should be good. Something that I know I'm going to look at when I'm going through my clothing is the changes in my lifestyle. I know for my dress clothing, I can get rid of a lot more formal clothing. I think the way the world has just shifted in general, I don't know about how your lifestyle has changed over the last few years, but I think things are just getting more casual. I personally went from working in person as a lawyer in an office 5 days a week to working remote all the time. So my wardrobe needs to adapt and shift a little bit. And I think I still have a fair amount of work clothing that I can probably let go of. I would like to still have some for when I travel for work and to have in-person meetings. And a lot of my work clothing was very versatile and I could wear in different settings that weren't just necessarily work settings. But I also feel like even if I were to still be in the office full time, office culture has changed over the last few years. So think about how your lifestyle is right now versus when you bought some of your clothing and how the environment is around you, and trying to figure out if those two things mesh and match up should hopefully help give you a different lens as you're going through and decluttering your clothing. For week 16, we're going to move on to our shoes. So you have a full week to declutter all of your shoes. Start by gathering them all together. I keep my shoes in my closet. Hopefully you have a centralized location where you keep your shoes, but you might have a few that are maybe sitting in the garage, lingering in a mudroom or an entryway, or maybe you have some for some reason at your desk at work or in your car. Grab all of your shoes and start to ask yourself the decluttering questions. One that I'm going to focus on is if my shoes are comfortable. I think I've honestly just moved past the point of wanting to wear shoes that are uncomfortable. Every now and then I might suck it up for a formal event, but I'm talking about a low level of discomfort for a formal event. If it's causing me blisters or I have to sit down because my feet hurt too bad, those types of shoes are done and out of my collection. I don't have time for that anymore. And I also kind of want to do a little bit of a style refresh, especially when it comes to boots. So head over to Instagram, help me out. I'm going to be sharing some of my shoes and asking you all to help me do some decluttering, figuring out what's in style and what's not anymore, because I could definitely use some help there. After you finish up decluttering your shoes, week 17 is accessories, and this is a pretty broad category as well. I would make sure you're going through all accessories like belts, scarves, hats, purses, wallets. Jewelry will be included in this as well. So it could be a pretty big week for you depending on how many items you have. And the questions are really going to be similar that you're going to work through and ask yourself. Try to be as realistic as you can here. Be honest with yourself if there's a certain area, like maybe you're holding on to too many purses and you know you're really not wearing some of them. Maybe that category is jewelry for you. Whatever the case might be, that is your focus for week 17. Week 18, you'll see is listed in white text on the schedule. That means it's a buffer week. And if you don't remember, buffer weeks can be used however you want to use them. So if you feel like you still have more closet decluttering to do, you needed more time with your accessories, shoes, some of your clothing, you can use that week to finish up decluttering your closet. Maybe there was a previous week that you fell behind on. Go for it. If you see something coming up later in the declutter and you want to get ahead, you can do that as well. If there's another space that I don't have listed on the schedule that you want to attack, that's an option. Or you could follow what I have suggested for this buffer week, which is kids' closets or extra closets. If you have kids, this is your opportunity to declutter their clothing, work with them as well. I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the end of the declutter because I have another buffer week talking about kids' toys. But the level in which your children are going to be able to be involved is going to depend, of course, on their age. So if you have a little baby, they're not going to be able to help you out. Young toddler age, because I am a mom of a young toddler, I know is more so going to be about what's ripped, what's stained, what's still in good condition, and can be passed down to the next child. If you're done having children, you can start decluttering some of that stuff. But if you do have older kids, I would highly suggest you get them involved in this process, because my mom and I had this issue when I was growing up where she would buy me clothing and I would say, thank you so much for the clothing, whatever it is, the new dress, the new shirt. And I always felt really bad telling her if I didn't like something. And it took a really long time for us to have this open, honest conversation. And she would get mad at me for not wearing the clothing that she bought me. And I didn't want to wear it because I didn't like it. So she was buying me stuff that I didn't like, wasting money, and then it would just sit there in my closet. So going through this process with your child, you can start to understand maybe why they're not wearing the clothing that you got them and adjust some of your purchase habits to hopefully avoid that situation that we ended up in. I've also included in this buffer week the opportunity to declutter extra closets. I left that pretty broad because I know that there are sometimes like a guest room closet and you have some clothing maybe stored in there and you didn't get an opportunity to declutter that area during weeks 14 or 15. Do that now. Or if you're somebody who has backstock storage of stuff, if you have seasonal items stored away like sweaters in a box in the basement or something, please take care of that now. I personally don't do that. I don't recommend storing clothing in different areas other than your closet unless you have truly space issues and you've done your decluttering and you really can't fit your clothing in the space that you have. If you don't have that situation, I would try and keep it in one spot. I know the way that I work when I get dressed is sometimes even in the winter, I'll wear a tank top with a sweater over it, or wear the same thing in the summer, wear a tank top, and then at night it gets chilly and I'll want to wear a sweater. So if I pack up my sweaters for the winter, I don't have that opportunity and flexibility. You may also have travels throughout the year that take you to a place that's warmer or colder than where you're located, and you might want that clothing to be a little bit more accessible. And the other thing is you just forget about the clothing that you have when you store it in different spaces, and you're giving up an opportunity throughout the year to randomly be looking through your closet and say, you know what, I don't like the way that fits. I don't like that piece of clothing. I'm going to declutter it. If it isn't there in front of you, that most definitely is not going to happen. So that's going to take you through week 18 of the sophisticated declutter. This is a big chunk of decluttering. Please try and keep up that motivation. I am here for you, always cheering you on. I will be on Instagram sharing stories talking about closet decluttering over the next few weeks. If you're subscribed to my newsletter, you'll get some information on closet decluttering. I want to wish you good luck over these next few weeks, but until next time, I will see you all later.